I left my home back in Winnipeg September 1st to come and honor and pay my respects to all children.
Tonight, she walked to remember the children in suspected unmarked graves.
That time, there was a great loss of language, there was a loss of culture, a loss of our way of life, and it greatly impacted our nations.
Old recordings help bring ancient songs back to life. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Family members and advocates made the trek to Ottawa today to call on the federal government to step up in support of the 4 Indigenous victims of an alleged serial killer. They're seeking help in the search for their loved ones' remains. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
I'm absolutely heartbroken and utterly shocked at what is happening to our people.
Cambria Harris is the daughter of Morgan Harris, who is believed to have died at the hands of an alleged Winnipeg serial killer in May. Harris said she met with the Winnipeg police Monday night and was told they believe the remains of her mother, along with Mercedes Myron and Buffalo Woman, are in the Prairie Green landfill site.
They had the nerve to put together this little PowerPoint of all the reasons why they won't search. And I didn't see one point on there saying why they should. There wasn't a single point. And it was basically to say, we failed you and we're not going to do anything.
NDP MP Leah Gazan didn't pull any punches at this press conference, calling for more help for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
This is a nonpartisan issue. This is a human rights issue. This is a life and death issue. We have had a national inquiry that was released in 2015 with a failure to act.
2 of the women are from Long Plain First Nation in Manitoba. Chief Kyra Wilson says the last few days have been extremely difficult.
The clear message is that we need those supports and services. We have 231 calls to justice. We need searches, we need supports, and it needs to start now. There hasn't been much that has been done when it comes to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Two-Spirit. There has been money identified for these supports, for these searches, and something needs to be done today.
Mark Miller, the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, took to the podium as well.
This is the first time I meet the family, so I think it's uncomfortable for them to have my back turned to them because the government has turned their backs on them for centuries.
Miller said it's a systemic issue and that the work the federal government is called upon to do is complex. It includes massive investments in education, housing, and oversight of provincial and municipal counterparts.
To account in searching for people the way they would do for non-Indigenous people where they were to go to missing, and the public outcry perhaps would be much greater. So there's no normalizing this away. This is happening today, and it is an absolute shame.
The family and leadership will meet again with Minister Miller to discuss immediate action and supports needed.
My mother didn't pass away with a home. So let's pay her the respect that she deserves by finally giving her one that's not a resting place at the Prairie Green landfill. And for these other women as well. I think it's disgusting.
Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
We'll have more on this story coming up later in the show. Meanwhile, today, December 6th, marks the annual National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. Dozens gathered in the Yukon to show their support. A vigil remembering women lost to gender-based violence was held at the Yukon Legislative Assembly building in Whitehorse. The event honored 14 women killed in an anti-feminist mass shooting at École Polytechnique in Montreal. Organizers noted the Yukon has 42 known cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. More recently, of course, a Winnipeg man has been charged with the first-degree murders of 4 Indigenous women.
December 6th marks the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women in Canada. It is a day to acknowledge and remember the lives of women taken by men and to celebrate the resistance of women not only here, but in our community and around the world.
In other news, the UN Conference on Biodiversity, known as COP15, is officially underway in Montreal. The 12-day summit is bringing together representatives from 195 countries with one goal in mind: to create a global framework to prevent and reverse the loss of biodiversity around the world. The last day of the conference will be December 19th, by which time the hope is an international agreement will be signed and money will be committed, saving wildlife and fauna. One goal that is gaining traction is a call to protect 30% of the Earth's land and oceans by 2030. Indigenous peoples are also attending the conference in several capacities. Tado Haho Sid Hill, traditional leader of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, delivered a Thanksgiving address at the opening ceremonies, but some came to protest as well. First Nations drummers interrupted Prime Minister Trudeau's speech by chanting, "Trudeau is a colonizer."
Being a democracy doesn't mean we all agree. It means we all work together, we all listen to each other, we all respect each other, and that's how we move forward on doing the most important thing in front of us, which is protecting nature.
Another big gathering is underway. The Assembly of First Nations Special Chiefs Assembly kicked off in Ottawa today, attracting roughly 1,500 people. And it is the first assembly since National Chief Roseanne Archibald went head-to-head with the executive over internal staffing issues at the Vancouver Assembly in July. APTN's Fraser Needham is there and has more.
When the Trudeau government passed Bill C-92 in 2019, Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief for Quebec and Labrador, Ghislain Picard, says the Quebec government had a choice: either hand the reins of child welfare to First Nations or take it to court. Now it's days away from going to the highest court in the land.
And I've said this to the governor of Quebec a number of times. You had the opportunity to do things differently, but you have chosen the other route. And as we've seen in the past couple of weeks, the government of British Columbia has decided to adopt a law that gives that capacity for First Nations in that province. Why isn't it possible for Quebec to do the same?
AFN Manitoba Regional Chief Cindy Woodhouse says provinces should be working with First Nations to implement the legislation rather than fighting them in the courts.
Provinces and territories must work with First Nations to support the implementation of the Act and First Nations laws. And
our apologies, that was not Fraser's story from the AFN. We hope to bring you that after the break. We'll also be bringing you a story about a 3,000-kilometer walk inspired by the 215 suspected unmarked graves in Kamloops. Stick around. Welcome back. As promised, we now take you to the AFN Special Assembly in Ottawa, where Fraser Needham is reporting.
It didn't take long to get to the AFN's current impasse between the national chief and the organization's regional chiefs. Kitigan Zebia Anishinabeg Chief Dylan White Duck brought up the issue in his opening remarks.
I just want to briefly discuss what happened this past July and the integrity of who we are as chiefs. I felt like was somewhat compromised.
Prior to the Vancouver Assembly, the executive had moved to suspend Archibald after allegations of workplace harassment surfaced, but delegates voted to reinstate her at the same assembly shortly after. On Tuesday, Archibald told the Ottawa Assembly it is time to move forward, and as part of this process, former Truth and Reconciliation Commission Chair Murray Sinclair is being brought on board.
In the months since the AGA, I've made every effort to heal and create harmony in the working relationships that I have with regional chiefs. In the new year, former Justice and Senator Murray Sinclair will be assisting us with conflict resolution and mediation.
For her part, Algonquins of Pikwakanagan First Nation Chief Wendy Jocko stands firmly behind Archibald and is convinced the organization can move forward.
I certainly do support the National Chief, Rosanna Archibald. I did nominate her, proud to say, and she was elected. 15 other chiefs, of course, also made that nomination. And historically, I mean, she's got 31 years plus behind her. She's a very experienced, seasoned chief, and I think she's done a tremendous job under the conditions of which we are all in.
But White Duck says he remains skeptical, and the only thing that can fix the FN is a new national chief.
The godfather and the reconciliation master himself, Murray Sinclair, I don't even think he could fix this. If they continue this rabbit hole of continue to look at HR, litigation, this division of regional chiefs and everything else for now, I just think it's going to be a warrant time that a new national chief will probably have to come in.
Day 2 of the assembly gets underway Tuesday morning. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Should be an interesting week. A walk that began in Winnipeg to raise awareness about residential schools has ended at the Atlantic Ocean in Nova Scotia. Angel Moore has that story.
After walking over 3,000 kilometers in 3 months, Jasmine LaValle has made it to the Atlantic Ocean. The walk is called 215 Plus, I Want to Come Home, inspired by the 215 graves in Kamloops.
I left my home back in Winnipeg September 1st to come and honor and pay my respects to all children, all survivors to the east, all our relations to the East Coast.
Vigil Moore is a residential day school survivor. He walked with LaValle to offer support and offered a message for survivors.
They're not forgotten. Our survivors are not forgotten. We all got hope for a better future. And to know that they're loved and not forgotten.
Residential school survivor Doreen Bernard of the Sipekne'katik First Nation came to give thanks.
I wanted to be here. I felt like I was saying thank you for all of our survivors and all of our ones that are missing, the ones that we are still searching for.
LaValle, who is Cree, walked with a backpack filled with baby moccasins, donated by people she met along the way. LaValle says the moccasins are sacred.
Because with every pair that was handed over came a story, came an imprint, came the first steps of a child's life.
This is the second walk for the group. The first walk was from Winnipeg to Kamloops. The next walk is from Winnipeg to the north, to be followed by a walk south to reach oceans in all 4 directions. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Conrad's Beach, Nova Scotia.
Kiashkagin Anishinabek, also known as Gull Bay First Nation in Northern Ontario, is taking legal action over inequitable Indigenous police funding. The chief of the Ojibwe community filed a claim against the federal government in Ottawa. Here's Annette Francis with more.
Chief Wilfred King told reporters legal action against the federal government is necessary due to the chronic underfunding for police services. King said the community of just over 300 has only 3 police officers and 1 is on sick leave. With only 2 on duty, there are times the officers cannot safely do their jobs.
In recent incidents where we had a violent offender in the community, the police would not respond because they could not get the necessary backup from Armstrong or Thunder Bay detachment. So
Kiasauging and Anishinaabeg is in a tripartite funding agreement between Ontario and Canada. Among some of the relief sought by the plaintiffs in the statement of claim are a declaration that the Crown breached its common law and fiduciary duties to the plaintiffs, and damages for breach of fiduciary duty, negligence, and under Section 24(1) of the Charter in the amount of $10 million. Lawyer Chantel Bryson said for decades Canada has acknowledged the negative impacts of its lack of funding to First Nation community policing, yet has done little to fix it.
So after 20 years of the bad faith of Canada in this regard, because again, they're doing it knowingly, it's been spelled out, much like in the child welfare situation. It's been spelled out over and over and over by their own reports, the Federal Auditor General, academic reports, etc. They know. And they hold the axe over the necks of the communities. You know, it's either this or nothing.
Bryson was also critical of the federal government's response to the recent crisis in the community of James Smith Cree Nation. She says flying in after the fact to drop off $42.4 million is not a long-term solution.
The answer is equitable police service in the community with a full officer complement comparable to other communities in similar situations, with full pay, with the full benefits that all other officers receive, including mental health, especially, and pensions, and a proper police station, and proper communications equipment, and proper information technology, and proper training.
APTN contacted the Office of Public Safety Minister Mark Mendicino for comment, but did not get a response by airtime. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
We return now to our lead story, where Winnipeg police are defending their decision not to search an area landfill for the bodies of 3 victims of an alleged serial killer. At a news conference this afternoon, police addressed the criticism leveled at the service. APTN's Leanne Sanders has more.
I would be heartbroken and I would be angry.
That from Winnipeg Police Chief Danny Smythe when asked how he'd feel if one of the alleged victims of accused serial killer Jeremy Skibicki was his family member. Head of Forensics Cam McKidd said the May search of the Brady landfill for Rebecca Contois was made easier because the site was isolated quickly with the help of GPS on city dump trucks.
The debris in this site was, as you would sort of expect when a dump truck would dump debris, it's above grade. It wasn't compacted, and it made this search, the conditions for this search.
A second landfill, Prairie Green, is heavily compacted with tons of clay, animal waste, and other debris dumped since investigators became aware of it as a potential site. Police believe Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron may be in the Prairie Green landfill, while the location of the 4th victim, now known as Buffalo Woman, hasn't been determined.
These are human beings. How can you even fathom the idea to leave them there? These women are deserving of a proper resting place, not to be left alone in a landfill in the dead of winter. If you want to respect and honor them, stop making excuses as to why you can't find them. You can. You are just refusing to.
Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
You can find more on these stories on our website, aptnnews.ca. Time for another quick break, but stick around. There's more to come. Of Sasakui Rapids Bridge near Thompson, Manitoba. Great shot, Judy. If you want to be featured as our photo of the day, email them to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 8 in Halifax, 7 with showers in Charlottetown. +1 in Nain, 2 below with snow in Kuujjuaq. +2 in Montreal, cloudy and 1 below for Val-d'Or. +1 with snow in Sault Ste. Marie, snow and -8 for North Bay. Snow and -14 in Thunder Bay, sunny and -22 for Sioux Lookout. -23 in God's Lake and the Paw, 21 below in Norway House. Sunny and -20 for Winnipeg, 17 below in Dauphin. -14 for Regina and Saskatoon. -14 with snow in Meadow Lake, 24 below with snow in the Ronge. In northern Alberta, -23 in High Level with snow and -21 in Fort McMurray. -2 in Edmonton, 0 for Lethbridge. +5 with showers in Vancouver, 6 above in Victoria. -5 with snow in Prince George, snow and 4 below in Dease Lake. -13 in Old Crow, flurries and -4 in Whitehorse. -33 in Yellowknife, 29 below in Norman Wells. -27 in Sax Harbor, 30 below in Paulatuck. -25 for Chesterfield, 29 below in Baker Lake. -21 with snow in Resolute, 18 below in Igloo Lake. An exhibit being showcased in Vancouver is connecting the past to the future through rarely heard traditional songs. APTN's Tina House has that story.
The meaning of the word potlatch is to dance, feast, and give gifts to everyone in attendance. Sometimes, naming ceremonies, marriages, birth announcements, and other important business takes place during the potlatch. For the Kwakwaka'wakw people on the West Coast, potlatches have taken place since time immemorial and are essential to who they are. It was during the residential school era in 1883 that the Anti-Potlatch Proclamation was issued, and January 1st, 1885, it became law, with the government citing that these First Nations traditions were keeping them from becoming civilized. The ban lasted until 1951, but during that time, many nations took this ancient practice underground and continued their culture, however, risked jail time if caught. Now, a new art exhibit called Keeping the Song Alive at the Bill Reid Gallery is showcasing 100 recordings done in 1947 of potlatch songs, and now these recordings are being shared with the public. Cheryl Kakasalos Wadhams is the Indigenous guest curator.
It starts with a woman by the name of Ida Halpern and Chief Billy Asu and Chief Mungo Martin, and their collaboration of recording songs, traditional Kwakwaka'wakw songs back in the late 40s.
The exhibit features viewing stations that allow users to wear headphones and watch videos of potlatches.
At that time, you know, there was a great loss of language, there was a loss of culture, a loss of our way of life, and it greatly impacted our nations as a whole, yeah.
For Cheryl, she says it's all about sharing these ancient songs with future generations.
We basically pulled this exhibition together along with community members from the Kwakwaka'wakw Nation to kind of reflect on their reaction towards the songs and what they have done for our people.
Keeping the Song Alive runs until March the 19th, 2023 at the Bill Reid Gallery. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Pretty cool. Special interlocutor on unmarked graves and missing children is our guest on an all-new episode of Face to Face tonight, right after the news. Kimberly Murray also spent 5 years as the Executive Director of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. She says she's disappointed many of the TRC's calls to action have not been acted on.
I remember that day when the announcement came about the Kamloops, the grounds of the Kamloops Indian Residential School, and feeling that sadness and that grief and that loss and feeling for the communities. And then I quickly became angered. Just thinking about, here we are 7 years, well, back then it was 6 years later, and none of the calls to action, 71 through 76, had been implemented. None of them.
And you can watch our entire interview with Kimberly Murray on Face to Face in less than 2 minutes time. And be sure to join us here tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's when Daryl will be putting Indigenous voices on TikTok and Instagram in focus. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For much more, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.